Welcome to Zeitgeist Radio. I'm your host, Morgan Rowe, founder of the Zeitgeist Academy. Zeitgeist means spirit of the times, and it is the collection of cultural forces that all contribute to what it feels like to be alive and part of a dynamic culture. Every episode, I speak with someone from a unique musical subculture. We dig into their passion and explore how music is a powerful force that brings people together. Before we get into today's interview, make sure you head over to zeitgeistacademy.com and sign up for my newsletter. You'll get weekly mini lectures on cool musical facts, backgrounds on our amazing guests, and updates on what's going on with the Zeitgeist Academy. I'm always up to something. Head over to zeitgeistacademy.com. That's ZEITGEIST academy.com. My guest today is Andy Watson, a comedian, podcaster, and country music performer in Central Coast, California. There are a lot of local towns discussed in this episode. Might be worth getting out a map and following along in the San Luis Obispo area of California. Andy, welcome to Zeitgeist Radio.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi. I'm excited to have you on. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, for folks out there, why don't you tell us a little bit who you are and what you do musically?
I have a lot of influences. I went to college and got involved with college radio. That was in the 80s. It was punk rock and alternative, psychedelic, and then just always loved music. Really have a passion for funk, and I had a funk band for 10 years. And then I saw the Ken Burns country music documentary, and I said, I need to play country guitar. So now I currently have a guitar duo with my partner, Jeff, and we've been having a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I did not know that about your past from punk to country. That is a very different genre shift.
Well, what I realized is that I went to school up in the Davis area in near Sacramento, and there was a lot of psychedelic. And I realized it was psychedelic country. They called it cowpunk,
Ah,
and so as I thought about it, I realized all the music that I really loved had a real country
right. You
influence.
liked it because of the country part. Um, Interesting. I didn't know that. Cowpunk.
Cowpunk. There's a band that still performs the Mother Hips, and they sing harmony, and it's kind of a rock and roll, Gibson guitar band. There was this band, Thin White Rope, that was big. There was a lot of alternative music going on, a lot different than now. There's not as many bands. We had the Meat Puppets were driving in a van and playing in a living room, and so there was, and the radio station really hosted these bands and supported them. There's a band, Camper Van Beethoven, and which had a violin, and then they went on to be Cracker, which was kind of a rock and roll. Cracker played at the Live Oak Music Festival this year. So
Nice.
these old bands that no one knows anymore.
You were involved. Did I hear recently that you were actually involved with the Live Oak Music Festival?
I have gone every year,
Yeah.
and it's changed a lot. I lament about it was at the Live Oak camp, and there was a lot of jamming, a lot of bluegrass,
Sure.
and mandolins, and then people would jam all night, and they'd set up elaborate camps and couches, and but as things got warmer and the fires happened, they moved it up to El Chorro, and the vibe is different. There's not as much jamming, and they've kind of moved into a like international. It's more like other festivals. They moved away from bluegrass. A lot of the old guys in town, they're like, "Oh, I don't like it," but I love music festivals. I go to a lot of them.
There's a lot of let's start with country because this is such a good segue into something that I was wanting to ask you about. There's a lot of different styles. Like when you say country, that's become a pretty broad term with people feeling pretty strongly, especially old versus new country, and the twang and the new flashy country and the older. So what's your take on all of that as a whole, what the genre is or isn't, or maybe it's all of it? And what do you like to play in it?
I'm very fascinated with the Bakersfield sound. And so my guitar duo does a lot of Buck Owens. He was a fabulous songwriter in the 60s, recorded on Capitol. And it was harmony. He sang harmony, and Dwight Yoakam, Merle Haggard are all from the Central Valley. And so, I joke about how the Yokies came came from Oklahoma to they fled environmental destruction, and now we find them on the Central Coast on their SUVs and wreaking havoc here at the fancy Paso Robles wineries. And but now, when I was in school, like no one listened to like corporate music. It was all very independent. And and country now, when I hear it, it sounds like it sounds like pop, it sounds
Yeah.
like metal. They always have these big choruses, and it's gone in more of a pop direction, which I don't like. I That's not the music I listen to. I listen to the pedal steel, and more of that old type of country.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about your duo, Jeff and Andy.
Jeff and Andy. I've known Jeff for a long time. We actually played in a band 20 years ago. I knew him in the late 80s. He's a fabulous musician. He great guitar player, and he also plays pedal steel. And so, I was playing drums, I was playing the bass, and I had done guitar, but he was the one that kind of helped me. He's a great teacher. He's a nurse in Arroyo Grande, and he really brought me up to speed. And this was kind of a COVID project but I love singing, and I love singing harmony.
Nice.
So, yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Nice. So, I think some listeners here, may not have a background in country. Can you explain what pedal steel is?
Pedal steel is a guitar that is on your lap, and you play a slide, and it's kind of that. It comes out of I think the early pedal steel came out of the Hawaiian slack key guitar players, and so it has that kind of blues slide quality that you hear a lot on early country records.
Yeah. Yeah, I encourage people to go take a listen. It sounds really cool, and it's really interesting to watch people play it. My brother-in-law picked this up recently. Um, and, yeah, it's really it's have you ever tried to play it? Is it anything like playing a guitar?
No, I have
Yeah.
played slide like in a blues style,
Yeah.
but Jeff, who was up here in Templeton, took that on and really took to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
the
that is a very distinct country sound.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And Bakersfield country, they said in Nashville, you heard the country in church, and in Bakersfield, you heard it in the bars, in the honky tonks. And I'm so fascinated with a time in the 60s in the Central Valley where there was just a lot of support of live music. There was the oil workers, there was the Mexicans, the Filipinos, and the Okies, and they were, it's that's where art comes from. It comes from that mix of cultures.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
Buck Owens, by the way, he had a partner that he sang, and they sang like, I mean, they were like the Everly Brothers. I mean, they had such tight harmonies. And his guitar partner was named Dangerous Dan, who unfortunately he died in a motorcycle accident on Highway 1 in Morro
Oh,
Bay.
yeah.
So there's a little bit of country history out here in Morro Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a little local lore of a sense.
Have you heard that?
I've heard that
Oh,
story, but,
wow. I think someone else now I'm gonna Johnny Carson's son
oh,
died in
yeah.
Cayucas. So there's a little bit more history. I love history, and
Yeah.
also I have a podcast that focuses on local.
Yes, you do. And I listened to it very recently, just yesterday on my drive up to, San Francisco. So, tell me about your podcast a little bit.
I have been I've been active in Santa Maria. I'm a school teacher, and I teach in a primarily Latino population, and I've been involved in local politics, local elections, and I'm involved with a nonprofit. It's called Corazon del Pueblo, and they promote arts in the valley, and it's a community that is bigger than Santa Barbara, but really is really lacking a lot. And I've been advocating in the schools forever uh, to do more arts, and it's been just like pulling teeth.
Mm.
And now Cowboy Jeff and Andy was just a chance to shine a light on local. I mean, our newspaper is just barely covering local issues. It's a national company, and I just think that podcasting can really fill a void. And I my podcast focuses on giving people a voice. I've done podcasts on immigration. I did a podcast on Farm Day
Yeah, I just
and the
listened to that
rodeo.
one.
I did a
Yep.
lot on the rodeo,
Mhm.
and I try to mix in a little comedy, keep it fun.
Yes. Yeah, so let's kinda touch on all of these things that you do, and then we'll dig deeper into 'em, in a little bit here. So you do comedy as well, and that's how I know you. So explain how you got into that and what types of comedy you do.
I just wanted to get out of the house after COVID, and I think, boy,
Mm.
the comedy scene is exploding. And I discovered the Central Coast Comedy Theater, and you work over there as well, Sabrina Pratt. And I started taking improv, and then I thought I would give comedy a try. I joke that I didn't think I could do comedy because my mother loved me, and but now I think at middle age I built up enough anger.
There we go.
There's always a
Nice.
little anger
There's a I
underpinning in
know.
comedy.
It's actually really funny that I am involved in this. I think that the improv is a good, mix, and we actually had, Jill Gibson on as a previous guest
I
here to
heard that
talk about
program as
the
well. Yeah,
musical improv, but, yeah, I can be a little picky about comedy because yeah, it seems like there's themes that everyone uses that I'm just like,
really. I've heard that from other women, especially like the
Well,
what? Can you tell me more about that?
yeah, I'm just so for example, like most local comedy, um the themes are about being overweight, being single, being ugly, and being socially awkward.
And then there's the sex stuff as well.
And then there's sex stuff
Yeah.
too. And at least with the sex stuff, they're like having a good time. It's otherwise it's just depressing. Like it seems like those. Oh, and smoking pot. Those themes have made up, I think, 95% of the local comedy that I've heard, and I'm just like, there's so much else to life. So the ones I really like,
Who do you like?
um, I just went to see Brian Regan. He's pretty I mean, he has a
Huh?
whole skit on how to make a peanut butter sandwich.
And it's
That's
clean.
funny.
And it's clean.
And yeah, the clean I can, you know, take or not. Um, but yeah, I had a good time at his show. Um And, I don't know, I tend to like stuff that's like, I heard one guy in Portland give a great skit about going to a zoo, and just taking these things that we do in everyday life and not just constantly all this self-deprecation stuff. I'm kind of not a big fan of that. So, anyway,
Well,
that's a little tirade of my own, but
I try to stay clean.
yeah.
I try to do topical, like I love Bill Maher,
Oh, yeah.
and so I like to do the topical humor. I joke writing is difficult, but that's
Yeah.
kind of what I aspire. I'm going tonight to the Poorhouse. They have a fabulous show up there every Wednesday night, and they're bringing in they're bringing in people from the Bay Area and Bakersfield, and so the shows are fabulous.
Nice.
There's a lot of people up here that support comedy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the musical theater or the musical improv part has been really fun.
Uh,
And then that's how you and I got connected too. Um, so you talked about the comedy and the stand up a little bit. Talk to me about the musical improv because we have done a little bit. What made you join that part of the group?
well, I love singing,
Yes.
and we were talking earlier that I did choir in Santa Barbara at Santa Barbara High School with Phyllis Zimmerman, and she was a tough lesbian with a limp, smoked and drank, and was really tough. And but we really got a lot out of it. But I was raised in the church. My father was a preacher, and so I sang, and then when I got to Santa Barbara High School, that was really the best program. We sang a cappella and I went to Europe and I come from a theater family. I went to high school in Santa Barbara. We would come to Santa Maria for the theater. And so when musical improv came up, I said, "Oh, that was a natural fit."
Nice. So let's go back to your podcast. So what's the purpose of? So I let's clarify your duo is called Cowboy Jeff and Andy, and your podcast is also called Cowboy Jeff and Andy. so
Yes.
and
And the other thing is that um I'm a teacher and I really didn't learn schools didn't teach me a lot of creativity and as I look at the next chapter, I said I really wanted to develop myself as an artist.
nice.
And what artists need to do these days is connect with people, social media, and so the podcast was a way to market the guitar project and also just to it's fun to connect with people. And I know you've had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, it's super fun.
And I had a lot of fun. There's a lot of Santa Maria is just really a throwback, and I think probably Atascadero has a lot of those elements. And for example, we have the Elks Club. We have the largest Elks Club west of the Mississippi,
Wow.
and they have cook your own meat night, which is a hoot. And I covered the rodeo. And I remember when I first moved to Santa Maria, it was in the late 90s. They had the rodeo queen contest and the elk would interview these young women and they would giggle and give it was like a beauty queen contest. And they had a beard growing contest, the beard arena. So I entered the beard growing contest and this year and after I shaved off the beard in front of the school at the talent show.
oh, I bet they loved that.
Yeah, and we developed I do characters and I have a Cowboy Jeff and Andy character
I was
and
gonna ask about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had this rival. His name was El Chapo de Sinaloa and he was might have been a little bit more macho than me. And he came that night but he was wearing a handkerchief over his face and turns out he came down with a case of alopecia.
Oh no, what's
And I
that?
was giving him a little I said, "Hey, where's your, weren't you on Fast and the Furious?" He didn't like that comment at all, and then his wife came walking toward me, and she had her slapping hand ready to go, and the MC, intervened with his wide girth. So, and Jeff had the line, which I really liked. He said, "You don't want to get slapped by a girl at a beard growing contest." So I need to develop the comedy more. It takes but that's my dream is to do like a old like Buck Owens had a show. He had his own TV studio and he was a really early pioneer where he would produce his show and there were regional country shows. Dolly Parton was on the Porter Wagner show. There was a big show in New Orleans. And so these guys produced their own shows, put them out and also, Buck Owens was involved. He was driving down to LA a lot, and he had the early Gibson guitars, the early Gibson Telecasters. So, so I was really inspired by that. He was kind of a hound dog too. I hear stories about women going up to the Crystal Palace, and you could dance with him, but he was a little handsy. I think he and Merle Haggard. I believe that they had a love triangle. They both had shared the same woman.
oh boy.
And then Merle Haggard, I did write a song about Merle Haggard, and he was born in a boxcar and was really had a troubled life. And really his life was saved by music. So I just appreciate all those stories from the Valley. I think the Bakersfield sound is a little not covered as much as maybe the
yeah.
Nashville.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go back to that. So you said you wrote that song. So you've written several songs, yes?
Yeah, and I wrote a song about Merle Haggard, and it's called "Run Merle Run." And I've done a song about the Madonna Inn.
Yes.
I've written a song about the oil an oil well in Orchid. And I'm trying to be the Mark Twain of the Santa Maria Valley. That's kind of my goal.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the origins of a lot of country and bluegrass does this too, with a lot of storytelling. It's taken a journey. The whole, it's not like you mentioned the corporate these big choruses. It takes you somewhere.
Yeah, and I really aspire to make fun of the big choruses.
Yeah.
So I'm really kind of going more in the satirist direction, I think.
Cowboy comedy. So tell me about the character of is it Cowboy Andy or cow is it
Cowboy Jeff
Cowboy
and
Jeff
Andy.
and Andy? So it's Cowboy Andy and Cowboy Jeff.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we've done some skits about we're under the thumb of C&M Enterprises corporate, and they're wanting just us to improve our revenue, and we've been working with our corporate leaders to maybe generate a little synergy. We're trying to develop a Cowboy Jeff and Andy tri-tip. We think that has a lot of potential.
Nice.
Uh, but it's just fun that I'm doing mainly with improv friends,
Yeah.
and I'm looking to broaden um, to I mean being interviewed by you, and you're going to do my podcast. It's a way to kind of branch out and you know get beyond Santa Maria and get to the Central Coast. There's a lot of music history in San Luis Obispo. I there's a weekly jam with one of the original guitar techs for Ernie Ball,
Oh.
and there's a lot of guitar makers up here. So I'm looking. I just love history, and
Yeah.
I just don't think. I think there's a lot of history out there that really hasn't been covered.
I love that, and what I really enjoy about your podcast is it really is hyper local. You are all in on your community, and you know your community, and you interview like this Farm Days episode. You went out and interviewed all these guys from local farms right here in the Central Valley in Santa Maria.
Yeah, I love learning, and this is an area that I didn't know a lot about, but huge farming operations. It's farming in Santa Maria Valley is a $2 billion industry, and on the other hand, I teach children that
Yeah,
are the children of farm workers.
yeah,
Many they say half of the farm workers in Santa Maria are undocumented. We do have workers on the H-2 visas where they have motels on Broadway. And I'm teaching in a school of 1,000 kids that was built for 400.
oh boy.
And so communities like Santa Maria see this low cost labor force that farmers rely on.
Yeah. So it must be interesting in the schools. So do they have a music program there in your school?
They have band, and a year about 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, the schools in a low income district, they have a lot of money, and they had a choice between PE teachers or music teachers, and they went in the sports direction. Um, and so it's been pretty thin. Fortunately, there was a proposition in California last year. It was dedicated property tax money for the arts. And so we're ramping up, but for our district to do anything, they have to have the state kind of pushing it.
Ah, man.
And but that's what really inspires me because there's so much room for growth, and I teach ukulele, and man, I put a ukulele in a kid's hand, and you've taught music.
Mhm.
It's a miracle. It just the
They
lights
light
go
up.
off,
Yes.
and the schools. I mean, it is the standards and Common Core, and it's just drill and kill. These are kids that need, especially with the social emotional learning and COVID, they need an artistic outlet.
Yeah.
And I start teaching music because I just see that there's a need. Ukulele was one. Man, I'm ready to start a ballet folklorico troupe,
What?
and that's going to be a white guy teaching Mexican dance. That's going to be something. But I just see that this population needs this, but it's difficult. People that are working, it's a working class community, so the arts is just is there's this indigenous art. Actually, there's a lot of musicians. This Mexican bandas and
Yeah.
mariachis and a lot of harmony, but not a lot of venues. A lot of the venues closed down. We used to have more bars. We used to have real saloons, and now our big steakhouse, Shaw's, they remodeled it and they just kind of scrunched the bar and they put in white granite and so there's a lot less places to play. The good news is Orchid is really popping and sometimes, you need more of the middle class to really come out and pay and really support artists. So I come up to Atascadero a lot, San Luis, but I'm looking to get into Orchid and also get into the San Ynez
Yeah.
Valley. There's a big scene.
Yeah.
But boy, Paso is just packed. I mean, you throw a rock and it's just loaded with tourists and so those guys are supporting arts.
Mhm.
So I think in my retirement years, I might be spending a lot of time up here.
The mission of the Zeitgeist Academy is simple. I want everyone to live their best musical life. If your dream includes singing with confidence, I got you. I made a mini online course so you can get out of musical drama and finally understand which vocal elements make you sound good. Banish forever those fears of being out of key, off rhythm, and other assorted mayhem. Step into your best musical life, my friends. Sign up for the free course at zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. So do you guys perform live?
Yeah, we do. It's been a while. That's the thing that we're not as good at is the marketing side of it. And and we've been kind of focusing on the podcast. But
Yeah.
Jeff has been on vacation, and and so when he comes back, we're trying to kind of market ourselves, and the podcast is kind of part of that.
Yeah.
And we need a drummer. It would really help to kind of broaden the band. But I was in a funk band for 10 years. It was built around a Hammond organ player. Her name is Kalua, and we had a lot of fun and had a decent amount of gigs. But Kalua got into a more popular band, and man, I think we had 15 guitar players. So it was, and then I played the drums, and then we needed a bass player, so I switched to the bass. So I did a lot.
You're one of those guys.
Yeah, I
You
did.
can fill in anywhere.
Well, now I can. It's nice to be versatile,
Yes, it is.
but it's difficult to keep a band together. I
Yeah.
There was a band that I met up here, Jolland Station, and they were really good, but couldn't keep a drummer. They play more acoustic, and then there's that financial part of the band. Have you been in a band before?
You know what? I have been in a lot of groups. Um, I've never been in a band like with mostly instruments. I've been in groups with lots of singers, like sextets or barbershop or and singing kind of the older like 40s, 50s style tight harmonies, Pointer Sisters, Andrews Sisters, or arrangements of other songs from that era. So that's really fun. But I think it would be so fun to be in a band.
Yeah, I would like to do like a rock
I think,
project.
yeah, I would too.
Yeah,
That would be so
like
fun.
Fast. The band X. You ever heard the band
The
X
band X?
from?
I don't think so.
They were from LA, but it's kind of the Fast. I love harmony. It's
Yeah.
John Doe, and it was harmony and just fast. Kind of. I mean, it's really interesting. All these this confluence of music that comes together. Again, they were very influenced by country, and then
Yeah.
they had that kind of Ramones fast, and that was kind of a heyday for punk in the '80s. Very
Yeah.
fascinating time period. LA was really on top of a lot of things back in that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know that one thing I do like of, some of the older country is, they would have these duos, and it would be a guy and a girl or, 2 guys, but, um, there were female parts that, you could sing. So, because 'cause I'm always harmonizing this stuff and trying to, jump in whenever I can, even if it's just one person singing along, I'll make up a harmony because I like that. And so
Well, we'll have to do the George Jones and Tammy show. I just get so excited about musical improv because really the sky's the limit as far as satirizing country and singing harmony. And
Yes.
I was thinking about Jesus Christ Superstar, and I want to buy a car. Why should I buy? He's always climbing up that mountain. Jesus keeps climbing up that
Climbing.
mountain.
He-
It's like, where are you going?
He's a hiker.
And we love Sondheim. Uh,
Oh man, yes. Sondheim is Jill likes Sondheim. We had a whole rant about Sondheim. We kind of went off the rails a little bit talking about Sondheim when she came on. But
I, the thing
yeah.
about teaching is, I'm teaching kids that are 8 years old, and we do a lot of fairy tales, and fairy tales are dark.
Yeah.
Um, but I think kids need a little of the dark and light, and Into the Woods
Mhm.
really provided that. So I don't dumb it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, kids can handle a lot. And not necessarily, and I'm not trying to say that in a way that's like promoting like laying it on too heavy, but they have a much greater capacity, I think. And working at the music school, you just see everybody, all types of kids come in, all different ages. We taught everything from early music up until adults could come in, take lessons, be in a band, and yeah, music was a way. These kids would come in. And they'd be dragging their guitars on the ground behind them. They'd be, whatever. And then they'd go into their band rehearsal and they'd just come out all excited. There's definitely, I think, especially in a band type of environment, or just when you're making music with other people, can be really healing and invigorating, not just for kids, but for adults too. I know I feel that way still when I sing.
Yeah, and also when you teach the children of farm workers, and we're working on government right now,
Hmm.
and there's kind of this undercurrent of racism that is in our politics, and it's really hard to not talk about that. And we study how women got the right to vote. We were talking about Montana being a pioneer, and now people are trying to prevent people from voting. So it's a tricky time. We need a new immigration law,
Mm.
and we studied Ronald Reagan today. The Republican debate is tonight at the Ronald Reagan Library, and one of his achievements was that immigration bill in 1985. And I have a colleague that her mom achieved legal status because of Reagan. And so, anyway, there's a lot of activism going on in Santa Maria and in California statewide.
Mhm.
And so it's exciting. I'm from Texas, and there's a lot of Latinos in Texas, and so things are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find yourself living down there? Do you find yourself being influenced by the music? Such a vibrant music
Where?
of just the Hispanic music. The mariachi
Yes.
and the bando, you mentioned that, and I've seen them. You walk around here and you go to the festivals, and mariachi. I just never really was exposed to it very much, growing up, or living in Portland, Oregon is not a scene that I encountered very much, and so boy, I went to the tamale festival here. Oh, and there was a group just walking around. They'd stand and serenade you, and then they'd go somewhere else and serenade. Just kind of going in these little spots all around the festival. And man, when he was singing, I was like swooning. Like, wow, I get it. Okay. Wow, it was awesome. It was very cool. Very excellent musicians. And seeing it live at a festival like that, it was like, okay, I got to learn about this. This is cool.
Yeah, banda is, it's they use the tuba. It reminds me of the second line in New Orleans, where these are parade bands, violins, a lot of horns. And the Mexican music, they love the crooners. They love
Mhm.
these guys with big voices. The country guys are all nasally,
Yeah.
but the Latinos like the big voices. The other thing is that, Buck Owens, he would wear, bullfighting outfits, and and his music is very influenced by, by Mexican music. I saw a band, I was so excited. I saw a band, I was at the Siren, and I saw James Hunter. He's kind of a retro English crooner, but there was this band, Los Tranquillos, and they actually played at my house 3 years ago, and they sing like it's like Beach Boys, Beatles, psychedelic harmonies, and it's like there's this whole Mexican scene that is this kind of retro California soul. And he's from a the lead singer is Manny, and he's from a musical family, but really pros. And I was looking for him, and then I just stumbled onto him, and my friend was very impressed because my friend blew off that party. And then I was like, "Oh, these guys played at my house, the gig that you didn't see." So, but but I need to find more local bands. I have not found many local bands here that I'm like, "Oh, man, I gotta see them a lot." I'm not a big cover band type of guy, and I love the blues, but it's not like I was in Chicago and New Orleans. I've traveled a lot there, and there's just more of a scene. But I'm anxious to get out there more. Maybe I just haven't got out there enough, but I think the scene's growing.
Yeah, from what I've seen and just in the very short amount of time I've been here, there's a lot. I mean, it's almost overwhelming. There's a lot more going on than you think, and seems like it could be a kind of a small town compared to, the cities like San Francisco, um, LA, Bakersfield even. I think we're smaller than them.
Oh yeah. What I see with the podcast is that there's a lot of strength in the small town.
Yeah.
And and so I think Atascadero, this area kind of has people know each other. They've been to school together. And hopefully young people will get off the screen and pick up a guitar.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think your podcast definitely leans into that a lot, the local and the strength. It's very cool. Um What link do you see between comedy and music?
I study comedy, and I read a book about the Smothers Brothers, and there's a whole tradition of comedy duos doing music. Adam Sandler, um, and and so that's kind of the direction I want to go in. Satirical songs, Tom Lehrer. Um, I just think there's a whole tradition of that which I kind of want to get into.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I know that you've traveled a lot. Let's go back to the musical improv really quick here. So, you've seen all kinds of shows and you mentioned Chicago. I think you LA as well. Tell me a little bit about that. Some of the shows you've seen.
I was blown away in Chicago with the amount of theater that's going on there. There was a troupe that did improv in the style of Shakespeare, which just I went and saw it 3 times. I was like, "Whoa," and musical improv where they'll take a play or they'll take a top like a suggestion, and then they will do a whole hour with an accompanist and a drummer and do a musical. I saw improv in the style of Shakespeare. So it is just bursting with theater and something that has been kind of created here. They're doing shows every week at Slow Wine and Beer. And of course, I went to Rosa's Lounge, which has, I went to a lot of blues clubs, and there were fabulous clubs like, it was like the dance halls in Louisiana, but a lot of tourists, a lot of Europeans come for the blues. And so and I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans. I would go on the Jam Cruise, and I actually went on 7 Jam Cruises.
What is a jam cruise?
It's a music cruise. You ever heard of the music cruises?
I've heard of music cruises, but not this one.
It came out of the post Grateful Dead scene, and it was a lot of bluegrass, a lot of funk, and then that kind of hippy dippy, intricate guitar work. And you go on a ship, and you just for 4 days, it's just all music. And actually, they had a, master's camp at sea, and I did it a couple years with my keyboard player, where they brought in these pro musicians, and they did clinics. And I had a clinic with, Butch Trucks, who was the drummer for the Allman Brothers, um, and he told me to get a backbeat, that I had no backbeat, and, he was kind of curmudgeon-y. There's this guy, Colonel Bruce Hampton, who was in this band, the Aquarium Rescue Unit, and they were kind of a Zappa, like a Zappa type band, but O'Teal, his bass player, is playing with the Dead and Company. So the Aquarium Rescue Unit was kind of a farm team for the Allman Brothers and the Dead, and then a lot of blues. There was this band, the North Mississippi All Stars, that came from a musical family of Memphis. They had recorded. His dad was a famous producer that recorded a lot of those Delta blues artists, and these were the sons that were doing, um, s Luther Dickinson is a fabulous slide guitar player, and his brother's the drummer, and they were on the cruise. You can talk to them, and, so I really enjoyed that a lot. Unfortunately, the scene has music changes, and a lot of that scene is gone. I mean, I'm not going to see the Grateful Dead iterations anymore, but I went to college in the '80s, and there were people that, that they knew every set list. I mean, they were, "Oh, did you know that they sang Eyes of the World on December 8th,
Oh my
1972?"
god.
I mean, it was just the passion for the Grateful Dead at that time, and you see a lot of that passion still, but it was kind of this jazz. I love guitar players, and, James Hunter, who was at the Siren, fabulous guitar players, and so I'm attracted that a lot of horns, a lot of horns
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, which is also bando and funk, so that's around a
Yeah.
lot of your life. Bondo?
Banda, yeah,
Banda.
banda,
Oh,
yeah. And
banda.
the da na 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 pa 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 pum. It's a waltz.
Yeah.
But and I still wanna learn more, because in Santa Maria, there's this older generation, and they hear some certain songs, and boy, the Kleenex comes out. They cry.
Yeah.
And then I ask, like, their 50-year-old children, and I'm like, "What are those songs?" And, "I don't know." So that tradition is being lost. But I'm anxious to kinda do some interviews
Oh,
and look
yeah,
at
that would be
those.
very cool episode.
Yeah.
'Cause so what about I've heard when I was first learning about banda, what I heard was that the kids are, like, losing their minds over it. Like,
Oh,
the teenagers
well, good.
are and the group that I saw in Atascadero, the guy who was singing and I was swooning, he was probably 16, 17, 18. Like, his voice was amazing, his stage presence was awesome, his tone and pitch were just aw his phrasing, he was good, and he was young.
I hope. I do know that this music is in families,
Mhm.
and, if you wanna hear something, go to the Guitar Center in Santa Maria on a Sunday, and
Cool.
I've heard youth, singing a lot of harmony,
Yeah.
and, so it's I mean, I that's what I love about Santa Maria, and also, the Central Coast, is that the diversity and great art comes out of that diversity.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we could obviously talk a whole lot longer, I think. Is there anything else you'd like to share about Cowboy Jeff and Andy before I get into my final question of the podcast?
Just that, we're doing it every week. We're on Apple Podcast, and I'm gonna put on there my performance dates. I have a couple comedy dates coming up in at the beginning of October, and we have musical improv, I believe on the 26th at Slow Wine and Beer. So, I'd love to get people out there and support it.
Yeah, and I'll put links in the show notes and everything, so people can definitely check out the podcast. So I've got one last question. I ask every guest this. Do you know what the word zeitgeist means?
No, I do not.
Okay, so it's a German word, and it basically means spirit of the times. It's kind of like the feeling of what it's like to be in any particular time, era, culture, politics. It all kind of goes together. Um, so a zeitgeist moment I've taken to using to describe, because we've all had this where you're listening to music and something just clicks and you feel part of something bigger than yourself. It's not just the tunes that are coming in, like the music entering your ears. You're part of a scene. You're part of something bigger than yourself. What was a recent zeitgeist moment for you, or a particularly memorable one in your life?
I have a band that I love, and it's a band that I first saw. They've been around 25 years, and they're called the New Master Sounds, and they are British funk. They're almost a super group. It's just a solid rhythm section, drums, bass, and a fabulous Hammond organ player and a fabulous jazz guitar player, kind of in the style of Grant Green. It's basically funk jazz. And when I was down in San Diego, it was called acid jazz, and there was this band called the Gray Boy All Stars. Carl Denson, he still plays with Carl Denson's Tiny Universe. He plays with the Rolling Stones. The keyboard player in that band toured with Pink Floyd. So these are just all fabulous musicians. But the New Master Sounds, I mean, when I got divorced, I was at a show, and that was healing to me. And I think that's how people respond to music throughout life. And the New Master Sounds have not been able to tour. I went to the UK, to Leeds, and it was a little social club, and that was where they were from. And they said, "Welcome, the New Master Sounds. They've toured all over the world, and they've come back after 25 years, and they just rocked." I mean, it was amazing.
It was a moment.
It was a moment that I had traveled to go and see this band, and you see your favorite band, and there's just nothing like it. And I like good bands,
Yeah.
and I know good bands, and a band that's been playing for 25 years, they got something. And maybe they're not a household name, but there's a lot of bands out there that really can jam.
Awesome. Well, Cowboy Andy, thank you for being on my podcast.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Zeitgeist Radio. To uplevel your musical journey and become a music student for life, join the Zeitgeist Academy by signing up for my bi-weekly newsletter. You'll get exclusive content, blog posts, and behind-the-scenes insights. I love putting it together, and you'll love reading it. Head over to zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. That's ZEITGEIST academy.com/radio. Music for this episode was created by Ian Boswell. Please hit that subscribe button and tell all your friends you found a cool new podcast. See you next time.